I grew up with a foot in two worlds. One foot was in the world of Vietnam and student demonstrations and race riots. It was about green army jackets with black power fists stenciled on the back, like a challenge and a target. It was about underground newspapers and Robert Crumb and the American flag displayed upside down as a sign of distress. I grew up at Woodstock amid the mud and the ecstasy, the great tribal gathering of my generation. I grew up attending the tearful gatherings after Kent State, where we chanted, "One strike, three demands," and we sang "Four Dead" in Ohio. I grew up waiting for my draft number to come up, hoping it would never get to me. In a world of chaos, crumbling under the weight of an endless war and generation gaps and peace signs, I lost JFK in 4th grade, RFK and MLK in the 8th grade. The losses and the bereavements never ended. My other foot was halfway across the world. It was planted in the land of milk and honey, the land of Israel, ancient and beautiful. I grew up from my early adolescence in a world of true believers. I was a member of Young Judea, a Zionist youth movement, not organization, movement, they always said, which taught that the only legitimate place for a Jew to live was in the land of Israel. This was a world of possibility and hope. This was a world of new beginnings. It was green shoots blossoming from the ashes of the Holocaust. Israel, the land of unapologetic Jews, sexy, sunburned Israeli women, and arrogant, handsome Israeli men, armed and ready for physical conflict. It was a place to escape the humiliations of Jewish history and enter a world of ideological purity. It was a world without ambivalence or hesitation. Israel was where I was supposed to go. It was where I would feel the prompts of true belonging. I gained a whole new pantheon of heroes. There were suave men like Theodore Herzl, Max Nordau, brave ideologues like Ben Gurion and Zev Jabotinsky, erudite European philosophers like Ahad Ha'am and Aleph Dalet Gordon. In this world, my Moses was a guy, a rabbi and professor named Arthur Hertzberg. Excuse me. And the book he wrote, edited, was The Zionist Idea. Lorette, do you still have your copy? I still have my copy. You know how old it is? It's a 400-page book, paperback, costs $4.95. That shows you how old my original volume is. He wrote an introduction in The Zionist Idea, this book, this Bible. That essay was transformational, foundational, the point of origin from what I've known and believed. In this land, Hertzberg described, I wanted to serve in the army. In the land where I actually lived in 3 dimensions, all I wanted to do was not serve in the army. I wanted to dodge the draft any way possible. And so one of the shocking truths of my life is that I've lost my balance in both of my worlds. On each side, I am appalled by the crises of the moment, the fragility of democracy and broken promises, with ramifications that stretch as far as I can see. I admit to you, I feel lost and destabilized. It's like the first time as a student in LA, I was in a California earthquake. And I was in a mall, and when it starts to shake, you want to hold on to something to keep your balance, only everything is moving. There's no place to gain purchase. You are just moving back and forth without any power to find a sense of footing. I used to believe, like every Jewish baby boomer and generation older, if things ever got dark, God forbid, in America, if I ever felt threatened or endangered, I could open the door and escape. You didn't even have to apply for a visa. You simply show up at the counter at Ben Gurion Airport. You tell them your mother or grandmother was Jewish. The trumpets sound. The doors fly open. Welcome, Baruch haba. This promise has sustained millions of Jews over the decades. And until this time last year, that remained a part of the contract. But that was then, and this is now. The Israel of 2023 does not resemble the Israel where I lived in 1972 and 1975 and 1978. It is a land filled with anger, polarization, and strife. And like many of you, I don't know if I still belong. That great, urgent love I felt since I was 15 years old, the Zionism that sustained me through high school and college and framed the first decades of my American rabbinate, the 11 trips to Israel inspired by Arthur Hertzberg, I believe with the heart of a born-again zealot. But now the question for me, and I know for many of you, is how to reconcile this hard-wired love, this baked-in commitment to the Zionist idea with a country that is turning its back to us. There is already legislation poised to be ruled on that is intended specifically to disenfranchise non-Orthodox Jews like us. One new law, for instance, in the wings, will ban mixed gender groups from going to Robinson's Arch. If you've ever been to Israel, you've been with a mixed group, they won't let you go as a mixed group to the wall. But if you go around the corner, there is an area called Robinson's Arch that the government reluctantly gave for Jews to gather if they did not want to be segregated by gender. And now there's a very real possibility that access to that area will be cut off. No mixed gender groups allowed. Another law that's on the books about to go before the Knesset, where it will automatically get enough votes. Any law that in any way supports conversion by non-Orthodox Jews is going to be dismissed. In other words, any non-Orthodox rabbi here or in Israel will not be recognized as having the authority to bring someone into Judaism. And yes, there's another law poised to be presented to the Knesset that will reject the current grandparent clause that allows someone to enter Israel as a citizen, even if only one grandparent is Jewish. Why are these laws being promulgated? It suggests a dramatic grab for power by a handful of ultra-Orthodox men who want to redefine who is a Jew. That is a state where we will not be welcome. For a Zionist, I grew up always feeling included in Israel, and now I see the real possibility of being counted out, and it breaks my heart. I am a proud Reform Jew. I've traveled to Israel with many of you out of a deep commitment and familial love of Israel. We traveled together as Reform brothers and sisters. It's impossible for me now to imagine that our money will be gratefully accepted, but our worship will not. That's what it means to be defunded as a movement. We are not like the hapless Christian evangelicals from whom Israel teases millions of dollars away. But behind closed doors, those same Jews that say, oh, we welcome evangelical Christians, those same Jews behind closed doors, they deride, they make fun of those very Christians whose money they are taking. We're supposed to be members of the international Jewish family, but that day, in the eyes of those in power, those days have come and gone. What does it mean that we're about to be jettisoned? The ultra-Orthodox have always felt this way about us, but now it's going to be backed by Israeli law. And God knows it goes beyond Reform and conservative Jews of America. Right now, the women of Israel, women in the Knesset, women fighter pilots, women physicians, women leaders in tech, all of these women are greatly concerned about what basic rights they may imminently lose due to a minority of ultra-Orthodox politicians. These politicians are our Afghani warlords when it comes to women in public, in school, in the world. Right now, women who are waiting for a bus are being forced to the back of the bus to make room for men. Right now, Orthodox drivers are forcing women to cover themselves with blankets if they want a ride, or they're being refused a ride altogether. More threatened still are Israeli citizens who constitute the GLBTQ plus community. There is an active movement among ultra-right politicians who will do everything they can to deny them every possible right: the right to adopt, the right to legal marriage, the right of same-sex couples to hold hands in public. There is the very real possibility there will be no Israeli Supreme Court to protect their rights as they have been protected over the years. Look, I'm not an expert in Israeli jurisprudence, but I read a lot. I talk to people. I'm an avid media hound, and I'm seeing the same things that you are. A prime minister desperate to stay out of jail has decided to sacrifice the judges who may put him there. And a minority of Israelis with anti-democratic tendencies is willing to back him, even if it means the end of the modern state. Their own motivations are a deplorable mix: defeat the prospect of Palestinian statehood, expand the settlements and Jewish sovereignty, extract army exemptions for yeshiva students. That is to say, instead of yeshiva-age students serving in the army like the rest of Israeli public, they will be paid to study in a yeshiva instead, and they will hold the state of Israel hostage for funding welfare payments because they don't work. Whatever the motivation, they're ready to burn the house down, rip out the underpinnings of democracy, and redefine how we live and practice as Jews. I think I understand how this drift has happened in other lands, this drift from democracy, but the shock is that it's happening in Israel. Maybe I've made too many assumptions of how our ancestors committed themselves to a vision of redemption and plurality, to be an Or LaGoyim, a light to the nations. I thought that the Jews from 100 different countries gathered between Jordan and the sea would always believe in democratic inclusion, that they would live by the words of the Israeli Declaration of Independence. Those are words that have shaped my Zionism since I was old enough to understand them. And side by side with them, the words of Hatikva, one of the only national anthems that exist out in the world that does not mention blood or guns or cannons. It talks about holding on to a hope, Hatikva, the hope, the most inspiring dimension of Jewish life. But I don't know now. How can we reconcile the words of the Declaration of Independence and the policy commitments of the current government about gays and lesbians, about Israeli women, about Reform Jews, about Arab Israeli citizens and the rights of millions of Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza? I regret to say this, the possibility of reconciliation feels remote. I'm afraid that the hope, Hatikva, is in danger. Neither the national anthem nor the words of the Declaration of Independence are being reflected in what is happening in Israel right now. And in fact, in a recent move, one of the ultra-right-wing members of the cabinet in Israel suggested the Declaration of Independence should not be looked at as legitimate because it was never fully voted on by enough people. Of course, there was a war happening the next day, but that doesn't seem to have made a difference. I'm not the only person who feels this way. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Israelis are asking about the very same issue and are opposed to passing the misguided laws that I've mentioned. and more. This question is not a left-wing, right-wing split. It's not. It's clear when we look at this year's demonstrations that have happened every Saturday for 37 weeks. Those simple binaries just don't apply. If you look at the crowds and you talk to Israelis, as I have, who's there? Who's showing up? Tech workers, kibbutzniks, falafel makers, academics, bus drivers, fighter pilots, princes and princesses of industry, and they are out there every Saturday night. My friend Varda goes every Saturday night. Sometimes she takes her grandchild. We talked on the phone about this, and she said, we're doing this for the grandchildren. We're doing this for their future. This is a government that is trying to codify our exclusion, refusing to recognize Reform conservative Jews. A government that is legislating over 225 laws that would make Israel a hollow democracy with strong theocratic undertones. A government that shares no values with our congregation. A government that accommodates and tolerates anti-Semitism as long as the anti-Semites don't care about settlements or democracy. And they don't. How else can you explain how the Israeli government can cuddle up to the Hungarian government and the Polish government? I grew up in two worlds with a foot in each. I feel battle weary as I hold up my metaphorical banner for justice and freedom in both of my worlds. I have to admit that my arms are sore and my heart is heavy. In both places, my assumptions have always been that democracy is eternally vital and secure, that democracy could never be threatened at its foundation. But in both of these lands, and I've grown up, I've learned a very hard lesson. I have seen how ignorance, fear, and self-interest can topple the loftiest of aspirations. I never imagined just how fragile democracy is here. I never imagined how fragile democracy is there. So what's to be done? Well, someone has said to me, maybe it's time for us to walk away. Maybe we can just have to say, we can't follow you. Our Judaism has to be built and based on who and what we are and our values. We cannot follow this path off the cliff. But my Zionist DNA makes that impossible. This is not the time for us to turn our backs, not the time to talk about boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Let us think about a different course, about affirming a Zionism based on our sense of love and devotion to the ideals that still beat in Jewish hearts the world over. By that I mean the majority of Israelis and the vast majority of Jews all over the world. And that's the calculus that should guide all of our decisions. We do have a role in this current debate, and we cannot be ignorant. We cannot be ignorant. We have to read and pay attention. We are not just hopeless diasporans. A few people have said, well, are you still going to take that trip, the Bet Avodah trip to Israel in April? And my answer is emphatically yes. We are going, we'll enjoy, we'll spend our money, we'll see all the good stuff, we'll eat all the good food. We're going to have a great time. But it's about more than falafel in the Dead Sea. It's about solidarity, and we will show our solidarity. And on this side of the world, we will do the same. We'll continue to ask the CJP, who's been really good on this issue, to support equality and justice and democracy in Israel. We will work closely with the Israel Religious Action Center, an essential movement for justice with whom the URJ works. We will work hard at this temple to provide our children, all of our members, with the reasons that Israel belongs to us. All the ways Israel remains crucial. We want our kids to see Israel as a place that they will cherish, a place where they will be cherished in return. We Jews know why hope is indivisible. In prayers and songs and art and life, we Jews have expressed the undying conviction that we can only thrive in a democratic world that offers justice and equality to all people. There is no place in the world when human rights are snatched away that Jews will not ultimately suffer. This is true in Newton. It's true in Budapest. It's true in Rio de Janeiro. It's especially true in Washington and Jerusalem. And so we hope, we lean in. It's essential at this burdened and parlous moment that we recommit ourselves to the Zionist idea. There is no meaning in an eviscerated Zionism that denies the fundamental dignity of all people and turns the state of Israel into an Orthodox passion project. There is no worth in a political program that allows the state to be hijacked by grasping politicians or deformed by triumphalist ethno-radicals. 100 years ago, Theodor Herzl wrote the words, Im tirtzu, enzo agada. If you really want this, it is not a dream. If you really want this, it's not a fairy tale. And so let me just let you know. Here, these words written in 1947, these are the words from the Declaration of Independence that Israel has lived by, that people have demonstrated on behalf of for 37 straight weeks. We will not abandon our people at their time of crisis. We will rededicate our commitment to the solemn pledge made in the Israeli Declaration of Independence. Here is a paragraph I want you to hear. The state of Israel will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions. And it will be faithful to the principles found amongst the books of our ancestors. This promise, this pledge is the hope, our hope. If you'd please rise.